I woke up to pounding on my door at 3 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw him. Dante Cavalli, the most dangerous man in Venice. Alone. Soaking wet. Terrified. For days ago, I humiliated him in front of his captains. Refused his marriage proposal. Told him I would never sell my father's legacy to legitimize his criminal empire. Now he was at my door with 7 words that shattered my world. Marco is going to kill us both. His cousin. His own blood. Planning to frame me for drug trafficking, then murder me in my cell. Make it look like suicide. The wedding was not about control. It was the only way to keep me alive. I had 48 hours to decide. Marry a monster or die with my principles. I chose survival. I chose him. Now bodies are dropping. Federal agents are circling. And I just pulled a trigger for the first time in my life. My father built his empire on honesty. I am destroying mine with blood. And the worst part? I do not regret a single drop. But before we dive into this dark journey of blood, betrayal, and forbidden love, make sure to hit that like button, share this story with someone who loves intense mafia romance, and subscribe so you never miss another thrilling tale. Trust me, you will want to see how this ends. Now, let's begin. The knock came at 3 a.m., the kind that rattles your bones before it reaches your ears. I'd been awake anyway, staring at spreadsheets that refused to balance, watching numbers bleed red across my laptop screen. 2 years of payments to the Cavalli family, and somehow the debt only grew larger, like a living thing feeding on my father's ghost. Through the peephole, I saw him. Dante Cavalli. Alone. That's what made me open the door. Not courage, but the strange wrongness of it. Men like him traveled with shadows, an entourage of violence. Seeing him solitary and rain-soaked felt like witnessing a shark beached on sand. "We need to talk," he said. His voice had none of that warehouse authority, the tone that had wrapped around his marriage proposal 4 nights ago like a garrote. That voice had been power personified. This one was just human. Tired. Maybe even afraid. I should have slammed the door. Should have called someone, though who exactly would come save me from Dante Cavalli? Instead, I stepped aside and let him into my cramped Cannaregio apartment, where the smell of canal water seeped through walls that hadn't been renovated since my grandmother's time. He stood in my kitchen, water pooling around his expensive shoes, looking at the photographs on my refrigerator. My father, younger and laughing, holding up a massive tuna. My confirmation photo, all white dress and gap-toothed smile. The mundane archaeology of a normal life, or what used to be one. "Your father kept his office the same way," Dante said quietly. "Pictures everywhere." He said it reminded him what he was working for. "Don't." The word came out sharper than I intended. "Don't talk about him like you knew him. Like you had any right to his memory." He turned to face me, and I saw something in his expression I couldn't immediately name. Grief, maybe. Or guilt. 15 years ago, I broke into one of your father's boats, Dante said. I was 19, desperate, stealing whatever I could fence to pay for my sister's medication. He caught me red-handed with a crate of frozen swordfish. I blinked. This wasn't how crime bosses spoke. This wasn't how any of this was supposed to go. He could have killed me, Dante continued, each word seeming to cost him something. Should have, by every rule of the docks. Instead, he sat me down in his office, that tiny room that smelled like coffee and fish, and asked me one question. Are you stealing because you want to, or because you need to? The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in. I told him about my sister. Sophia. 8 years old, leukemia, parents dead in a car accident 6 months earlier. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he offered me a job. Legitimate work, decent pay, no questions about my family's situation. Why are you telling me this? I managed, though my voice sounded distant to my own ears. Because your father saved my life that night, and what I'm about to tell you is the only way I know to honor that debt. Dante moved closer, and I saw the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw. My cousin Marco is planning to kill me. Next week. And he's going to make sure you take the fall for crimes you didn't commit. The words hit like a slap. Marco's been negotiating with the Bianchi family from Naples for 3 months. He's promised them exclusive access to our northern distribution routes, your routes, in exchange for backing his coup. But he needs a scapegoat for the heroin operation he's been running through your shipping company. My shipping company. My father's boats. The words felt obscene. That's impossible, I said. I would know if. Your logistics manager, Pietro Rossi. How long has he worked for you? 6 months. He came highly recommended. By Marco. Dante's expression was grim. Pietro's been documenting everything. Every shipment, every route, every employee. Building a case that makes you look like the mastermind of a major drug trafficking operation. The federal police are getting an anonymous tip tomorrow. By Thursday, you'll be in custody, your company seized as a criminal enterprise. I sat down hard on one of my kitchen chairs. The room spun slightly. And Marco? I asked. What happens to him in this scenario? He becomes a hero. Cooperates with authorities, provides evidence against me and you. Gets immunity, keeps the legitimate parts of both our operations, and has the Bianchi family's full support to expand. It's actually elegant, if you can stomach the betrayal. I looked up at him, this man who'd proposed marriage in a warehouse surrounded by his captains, who I'd humiliated in front of his soldiers, who I'd assumed wanted to own me like property. The marriage proposal, I said slowly. That wasn't about controlling my business, was it? No. He met my eyes. It was about making you untouchable. My wife would be protected by every law in our world and yours. Marco couldn't touch you without starting a war he'd lose. But you. He almost smiled, a brief flash of something that might have been respect. You had too much pride to see you were drowning. I'm not drowning, I snapped. I'm surviving. Rosa. He said my name like a prayer and a curse. You're standing on the deck of a sinking ship, and you're so busy bailing water you haven't noticed someone drilled holes in the hull. The truth of it settled in my chest like a stone. 2 years of payments, of compromise, of watching my father's honest business twist into something unrecognizable, and I'd been played the entire time. Why would Marco do this to you? I ask. Your family. Because I wouldn't let him expand into human trafficking. Dante's voice went cold, deadly. Marco sees it as a lucrative market. I see it as a line even we don't cross. Some principles are worth dying for. The irony wasn't lost on me, a mafia boss with principles. But I'd seen the way Marco looked at the young women who worked in the dock offices, the casual cruelty in his smile. What do we do now? The question felt like surrender and declaration at once. Dante pulled out his phone, brought up a series of photographs. Security footage, financial documents, text message screenshots. Marco meeting with men I didn't recognize. Pietro Rossi photographing documents in my office. A whole conspiracy laid out in digital evidence. Now, Dante said, his voice regaining some of that warehouse authority. Now we burn down everything they think they know about us. We make Marco believe his plan is working while we dismantle it piece by piece. We turn his weapon against him. And how exactly do we do that? He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the calculation behind his eyes. We give them what they want, he said. We get married. I laughed. Actually laughed, the sound bordering on hysterical. For days ago, I told you to find another woman to legitimize your filth, I said. Now you want me to. 4 days ago, you didn't know you were about to be arrested for drug trafficking, he interrupted. 4 days ago, you still thought you had options. The cruelty of the truth silenced me. It doesn't have to be real, Dante continued, softer now. Just legal. Just enough to change the narrative Marco's built. His case falls apart if we're united. The feds don't pursue someone who's clearly been working with law enforcement, which we will be, once we feed them Marco and the Bianchi family on a silver platter. You want to turn informant? I couldn't hide my shock. I want to survive. I want you to survive. And I want Marco to pay for betraying everything my sister and I built after your father gave us that chance. His jaw clenched. Some debts can never be repaid, Rosa. Only honored. This is me honoring what your father taught me, that some things matter more than power or money. Family. Legacy. The difference between surviving and becoming a monster. Dawn was breaking over the canals outside my window, painting everything in shades of rose and gold. Beautiful and deceptive, like Venice herself, a city built on water and secrets, where nothing was ever as solid as it seemed. If I agree to this, I said slowly, I want complete transparency. No more secrets, no more games. If we're going to burn Marco's world down, I need to know exactly what I'm getting into. Agreed. And when this is over, when Marco's dealt with and my name is clear, we get an annulment. This is temporary. A business arrangement. Something flickered across Dante's face. Disappointment, maybe, or relief. Understood, he said. I stood up, moved to my coffee maker, went through the mechanical process of brewing espresso. My hands were steady, which surprised me. Everything had changed in the last hour, my entire life tilting on its axis, yet I was making coffee like this was a normal Thursday morning. There's something else you need to know, Dante said as I handed him a cup. Marco's not just planning to frame you. He's planning to kill you after the arrest. Make it look like suicide, guilt over being caught, unable to face prison. Ties up loose ends, generates sympathy, removes any chance you'll talk. The cup slipped from my fingers, shattering on the tile floor. Espresso spread like blood. Dante was there instantly, his hand on my arm, steadying me. I won't let that happen, he said, and the quiet certainty in his voice made me believe him. But Rosa, we need to move fast. The wedding has to happen within 48 hours. We need to be legally bound before Marco makes his move. I looked down at where his hand gripped my arm, strong, warm, anchored in a way that felt nothing like imprisonment. This close, I could smell rain and something spicy, expensive cologne. Could see the fine lines around his eyes, the small scar above his left eyebrow. Tell me about your sister, I said suddenly. Sophia. What happened to her? His expression softened in a way I hadn't known his face could manage. She survived, he said quietly. The treatment worked. She is 23 now, studying architecture at university in Milan. She doesn't know anything about what I do, what I've become. Your father made me promise to keep her separate from all this, and I have. He made you promise? The day he gave me that job, he said, whatever you do with your life, Dante, make sure your sister gets to choose hers. So I built walls around her. Good schools, legitimate trust funds, a life that has nothing to do with the Cavalli name or what it means on the docks. I understood then, with sudden clarity, why my father had helped this teenage thief. He'd seen something redeemable, something worth saving. And maybe, despite everything, there was still something of that desperate 19-year-old boy and the man standing in my kitchen. Okay, I said. Okay, I'll marry you. We'll burn Marco's world down together. But Dante... I stepped closer, close enough that he had to tilt his head slightly to maintain eye contact. If you betray me, if any of this is a lie, I will spend the rest of my life making you pay for it. I might not have your resources or your soldiers, but I have something you apparently value, my father's legacy. And I will use every bit of it to destroy you. He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his entire face. Your father would be proud of you, he said. That fire, he had it too. It's what kept him honest in a dishonest world. Then, let's hope it's enough to keep us alive. The wedding took place in a small chapel in Dorsoduro, the kind tourists never found, where locals had been baptizing babies and burying grandparents for 300 years. No guests, just witnesses, Dante's lawyer and his Aunt Teresa, an elegant woman in her 60s who looked at me with something between pity and approval. I wore a simple cream dress I'd bought that morning, nothing like the elaborate gown every girl dreams of. This wasn't that kind of wedding. This was a transaction, a strategic move in a game I was still learning the rules to. But when Dante took my hand to slide the ring onto my finger, a vintage piece, emerald flanked by diamonds, his touch was gentle, almost reverent. I know this isn't what you wanted, he said quietly, so only I could hear. But I promise you, Rosa, I will do everything in my power to make sure you survive this. Whatever else happens, whatever else I am, that promise is real. The priest pronounced us married, and Dante kissed me. Brief, chaste, the kind of kiss you might give a business partner. Except his hand lingered on my cheek for just a moment too long, his thumb brushing my jawline with unexpected tenderness. Now what? I asked as we signed the marriage certificate. Now we go to war, Dante said. The safe house was in Murano, tucked away behind a glass factory that hadn't operated in a decade. From the outside, it looked abandoned. Inside, it was a fortress. Reinforced doors, security cameras covering every angle, and enough weapons to outfit a small army. "This is where we'll stay until we're ready to move against Marco," Dante explained as he showed me through rooms that somehow managed to feel both sterile and luxurious. "He thinks we're at my main residence in Mestre. Let him think that. Let him believe his plan is working." "And Pietro?" I asked. "My logistics manager?" "Being dealt with as we speak." Dante's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression hardening. "Actually, change of plans. Julia just confirmed Pietro tried to run. Made it as far as the train station. Tried. My men stopped him. They're bringing him here. I need you to see this, Rosa. Need you to understand exactly who's been sabotaging your company." 20 minutes later, they dragged Pietro Rossi into the safe house basement. He was bleeding from a cut above his eye, his expensive suit torn, terror making him look smaller than I remembered. "Rosa," he gasped when he saw me. "Thank God. Tell them there's been a mistake. I would never document my shipping routes for a drug operation." I interrupted, surprised by how cold my voice sounded. "Never photograph my employee files? Never build a federal case designed to put me in prison for life?" His face went pale. "Marco said you'd never find out," he whispered. "Said it would be clean, that you'd just disappear and I'd get to run the company. The betrayal shouldn't have hurt. I'd barely known him 6 months, but it did. This man had eaten at my table, smiled at my staff, pretended to care about my father's legacy while plotting to steal it." Dante stood behind Pietro, utterly still. A predator deciding whether to strike. "What do you want to do with him?" Dante asked me, his voice carefully neutral. I thought about mercy, about my father's lessons, about the person I used to be before all this started. "I want answers," I said. "Everything. Every meeting with Marco, every document you copied, every person involved. You give us that, you might live." Pietro talked for an hour. Names, dates, locations. Marco's network was bigger than we'd thought, captains, politicians, even federal officers on his payroll. By the time he finished, we had enough to dismantle the entire operation. "What now?" Pietro asked, hope flickering in his eyes. Dante looked at me. This was my choice, my moment to decide who I was becoming. "Lock him up," I said. "When we meet with the prosecutor, he's part of the deal. Witness protection, reduced sentence, whatever keeps him alive to testify." "Rosa, no." Pietro lunged forward, but Dante's men restrained him. "Marco will kill me. Even in witness protection, he'll find me." "Then you'd better pray we take Marco down first," I said coldly. After they'd taken Pietro to a secured room, Dante poured us both whiskey. "You surprised me," he said. "I expected you to want him dead." "Part of me does," I admitted. "But killing him doesn't help us. His testimony does." My father would say the smart choice and the right choice are sometimes the same thing. Your father was a remarkable man. We drank in silence, the weight of what we'd learned pressing down. Marco's conspiracy was vast, intricate, and about to collapse on him like a house of cards. A door opened somewhere in the safe house, and a woman appeared. Mid-30s, athletic build, intense eyes that cataloged everything in a single sweep. "This is Julia," Dante introduced. "My head of security, and the only person besides Aunt Teresa I trust completely." Julia nodded at me. "Mrs. Cavalli. Welcome to the family business. I've secured the perimeter and scrambled our communications. We're dark to Marco's network." Mrs. Cavalli. The name felt foreign, like a coat that didn't quite fit. "What's the latest?" Dante asked. "Marco knows Pietro's been taken. He's scrambling, moving up his timeline. My sources say he's planning something for tonight, hitting multiple locations, hoping to flush us out." "How many men?" I asked. "Best guess? 7, maybe 8. Split between 3 targets." Julia pulled up a map on her tablet. "Your apartment in Cannaregio, Dante's restaurant in Mestre, and here. He doesn't know which location we're actually at, so he's covering all bases." "Then we know he's coming," Dante said slowly. We know when, approximately where, and how many. That's not a problem, that's an opportunity. You want to ambush them, I realized. I want to send Marco a message he can't ignore. That we're not running scared, that every move he makes, we're 3 steps ahead. Julia was already nodding. I can have additional teams at the other locations in 30 minutes. Trap his men, extract information, use it to tighten the noose. Do it, Dante ordered. She left to make calls, and suddenly it was just the 2 of us in the enormous safe house, with violence approaching and no way to stop what we'd set in motion. Are you scared? I asked Dante. Terrified, he admitted. Not of Marco's men, I've survived worse. But of losing you before we've even had a chance to see what this could be. The confession hung between us, honest and raw. It's just a business arrangement, I said, but the words felt hollow now. Is it? Dante moved closer, his hand coming up to cut my face. Because every time I look at you, every time you show that steel your father gave you, I forget this was supposed to be temporary. My heart was pounding, and I wasn't sure if it was fear of the coming violence or fear of what I was feeling for this dangerous, complicated man. Dante, His phone exploded with alerts. Security cameras showing movement outside, 3 vehicles, 7 men, exactly as Julia predicted. They're here, Dante said, his entire demeanor shifting from vulnerable to lethal in an instant. Rosa, listen to me carefully. Julia will take you to the panic room. It's reinforced, has its own exit route. If anything happens to me... No, I interrupted. I'm not hiding while you fight my battles. This isn't your world. It became my world the second I said I do this morning. I straightened my spine, channeling every ounce of my father's stubborn courage. Teach me to shoot. Make me useful. But I'm not sitting this out. Something flashed in Dante's eyes, respect, desire, maybe fear for both of us. You're going to get us both killed, he said. Or we're going to survive together, I countered. Julia taught me to shoot in 20 minutes, which she made very clear was not enough time to make me anything resembling proficient. But, she added, pressing a pistol into my hands, at close range, even an amateur can do damage. Safety off, point at center mass, squeeze don't pull. And, for God's sake, if you have to shoot, don't hesitate. Hesitation gets you killed. The gun felt wrong in my hands, heavy, purposeful, designed for one thing only. But I held it anyway, because the alternative was dying in my wedding dress in a safe house in Murano. Dante was setting up positions, turning the safe house into a maze of deadly angles. He moved with the confidence of someone who'd done this before, which I supposed he had. Rosa, you'll be in the bedroom, he directed. It's the last place they'll check, and it has the best exit route if everything goes sideways. Julia takes the kitchen entrance, I'll handle the main door. And if they split up? They will. Standard clearing procedure. That's when we take them. He said it so casually, like we were discussing dinner plans rather than premeditated killing. Dante, I said quietly, pulling him aside. I need to be clear about something. If we do this, if we cross this line, I'm not just your legal wife anymore. I'm complicit. I'm part of your world completely. He met my eyes, and I saw the weight of what he was asking me to become. I know, he said. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry your father's debt led you here. I'm sorry Marco's ambition put you in this position. I'm sorry I couldn't find another way. But Rosa, if you want to survive, if you want any chance of reclaiming your life after this, we have to win tonight. And if I can't do it? If the moment comes and I freeze. He touched my face, the gesture startlingly intimate. Then I'll do it for you, he said. I'll carry that weight so you don't have to. But I'm hoping you're stronger than that. I'm hoping you have your father's fire, because that fire is what's going to keep us alive. Julia appeared in the doorway, holding up her phone. They're 2 minutes out. 3 vehicles, 7 men confirmed. Marco really wants you dead. Positions, Dante ordered. I moved to the bedroom, pressed myself against the wall beside the window where I could see the approach without being visible from outside. The gun felt slick in my sweating palms. Below, car doors opened quietly. Shadows moved with practiced coordination. These weren't common thugs, they were soldiers, trained and disciplined. Then everything went dark. The lights cut out completely, plunging the safe house into blackness. Not the work of circuit breakers. This was deliberate. Marco's men had cut the power. My heart hammered against my ribs. In the darkness, every sound magnified: my own breathing, the creak of old floors, something that might have been footsteps or might have been my imagination. Then the emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. Rosa? Dante's voice came through a small radio Julia had given me. Status. Fine, I whispered. I'm fine. What's happening? Power cut, but we expected that. Stay in position. This is actually better. They can't see any better than we can, but we know the layout. A crash from downstairs. Breaking glass. They were coming in. I gripped the gun tighter, my finger resting near the trigger like Julia showed me. Every nerve in my body screamed to run, to hide, to be anywhere but here. But I stayed. Because Dante was right, I had my father's fire. And that fire didn't run. The bedroom door burst open. A man stood silhouetted in the doorway. Young, maybe 25, with a thin scar running down his jaw. His gun swept the room methodically until it found me. Our eyes met. Julia's voice echoed in my head. Center mass. Squeeze, don't pull. I fired. The recoil shocked me more than the sound. The man stumbled backward, red blooming across his shoulder. Not center mass, I'd pulled right at the last second. But it was enough. He dropped his weapon, cursing in dialect I barely understood. Dante appeared behind him like a shadow made flesh. What happened next took 3 seconds that felt like hours. Dante moved with brutal efficiency, a strike to the throat that crushed the windpipe, another to the temple. The man collapsed, blood pooling beneath him from where his head cracked against the floor. Dead. I just witnessed my first murder. You okay? Dante asked me, his voice eerily calm. I nodded, though my hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the gun. Good. Stay here. Lock the door after me. Don't open it for anyone except Julia or me. He was gone before I could respond, disappearing into the red-lit chaos. I locked the door with trembling fingers and pressed my ear against it. The sounds of fighting had moved deeper into the safe house. More gunshots. Someone screaming. Glass shattering. Then silence. The worst kind of silence. Footsteps on the stairs. Coming toward my room. Heavy, deliberate, nothing like Dante's careful tread. I raised my gun, aiming at the door, my finger on the trigger. The handle turned slowly. Rosa? A voice I didn't recognize. Rosa Ferretti? We're here to help you. Marco sent us to rescue you from Dante Cavalli. My blood ran cold. This was Marco's backup plan, make his men think they were saving me, that I was a hostage rather than a willing participant. If I opened that door believing them, they'd kill me and call it a tragic misunderstanding. I'm not opening the door, I called back. Mrs. Ferretti, please. We know you were forced into this marriage. We know Dante's been threatening you. Let us help you. The lie was so smooth, so believable. If I hadn't spent the last day with Dante, if I hadn't seen Pietro's confession, I might have fallen for it. I said no. Silence. Then whispered, conferring I couldn't quite make out. The door exploded inward in a shower of splinters. 2 men rushed in, guns raised. I fired wildly, desperately. One shot went wide, embedding in the wall. The second caught the first man in the leg. He went down screaming. The second man's gun swung toward me. The window behind me shattered. Julia came through like an avenging angel, her weapon already firing. 2 shots, precise and deadly. The second man dropped. She was bleeding from a cut on her arm, her face splattered with what I hoped was someone else's blood. Are you hurt? She demanded, checking me over with professional efficiency. No, Dante? Where's Dante? Downstairs, cleaning up. 4 down, 2 surrendered. 1 got away, but he won't make it far. She pressed a cloth to her bleeding arm, barely wincing. You did good, Rosa. That leg shot probably saved both our lives. I looked at the carnage, 2 bodies, blood soaking into the expensive carpet, the acrid smell of gunpowder thick in the air. I'd done this. Part of this. First time's always hard, Julia said, reading my expression. But they came here to kill you. Remember that. This wasn't murder, it was survival. Dante appeared in the doorway, and relief crashed through me so powerfully my knees went weak. He had blood on his shirt, a bruise forming on his jaw, but he was alive. Everyone accounted for? Julia asked. 6 dead, 2 in custody. The one who escaped was Paolo Ricci, Marco's nephew. He'll run straight back and report that we were ready, that his ambush failed spectacularly. That's good. I asked, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. That's perfect. It means Marco knows his power is slipping, that his carefully laid plans are falling apart. Desperate men make mistakes. Dante moved to me, his hands gentle as he took the gun from my trembling fingers. Rosa, look at me. I did, and saw not the cold crime lord, but the man who'd stood in my kitchen promising to keep me alive. You were so brave tonight, he said softly. Braver than you should have had to be. I'm sorry you saw that. Sorry you had to do that. But you survived. We survived. The man outside the door, I said. The one did you have to kill him? Couldn't you have just knocked him out? Dante's expression hardened slightly. He came here to murder my wife, he said simply. I don't give second chances to people who threaten what's mine. What's mine? The possessiveness should have bothered me. Instead, it made me feel something dangerous, protected, valued, claimed. We need to move, Julia interrupted. Police response will be here in 10 minutes, maybe 15. The bodies are already being handled, Dante said. Cleanup crew is en route. We'll be gone before authorities arrive, and what they find will look like a gang dispute that has nothing to do with us. The 2 prisoners? I asked. Coming with us. They have information Marco doesn't know they have about his meeting with the Bianchi family, about his planned testimony against us, about everything. By dawn, we'll have enough to bury him legally and permanently. The boat ride to our next safe house felt surreal. Dawn was breaking over Venice, painting the canals in shades of gold and rose, while we fled a massacre with 2 bound prisoners and enough evidence to start a war. I sat beside Dante in the cabin, unable to stop shaking despite the blanket Julia had wrapped around my shoulders. Drink this, Dante said, pressing a flask into my hands. I drank without asking what it was. Brandy, expensive and burning. It helped slightly. I killed someone tonight, I said quietly. Or helped kill them. I'm not even sure which is worse. Neither, Dante said. You defended yourself. There's no moral ambiguity in that, Rosa. Those men came to murder you in your sleep. But my father, he built his whole life on not crossing certain lines. And I couldn't finish the sentence. Your father lived in a different world, Dante said. One where honest work was enough, where being good meant being safe. He tried to give you that world, but I took it away when I made him that promise 15 years ago. When he saved me, he connected your life to mine, and my world doesn't play by his rules. Do you regret it? I asked suddenly. The life you've lived? The things you've done? He was quiet for a long moment, watching the water slip past. I regret that your father's kindness led you here, he said finally. I regret that I couldn't protect you from this without making you complicit in it. But do I regret surviving? Regret keeping Sophia safe? Regret building something from nothing, even if that something is stained with blood. He looked at me, his eyes dark and honest. No, I don't regret surviving. I only regret the cost. The new safe house was a penthouse apartment in a modern building near Tronchetto, anonymous, secure, completely different from the industrial fortress we'd left behind. Julia disappeared with the prisoners to an interrogation room I pretended not to notice, which left Dante and me alone in the enormous living space, with floor-to-ceiling windows showing Venice waking up to a normal Thursday morning while we processed the violence of the night. You should rest, Dante said. You've been awake for God almost 40 hours? So have you. I'm used to it. I'm not sleeping alone, I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. Not after tonight. I know this is supposed to be temporary, just business, but I need. Rosa. He crossed to me in 3 strides, pulling me against his chest. His heart hammered beneath my ear, proof he wasn't as calm as he pretended. You don't have to explain. I understand. We stood like that for a long moment, 2 people bound by violence and desperation, pretending we weren't becoming something more. Come on, he said finally. Let's at least lie down, even if we can't sleep. The bedroom was huge, dominated by a massive bed that seemed absurd for two people who barely knew each other. But we lay down anyway, fully clothed, the space between us feeling both vast and insufficient. Tell me something real, I said into the darkness. Something true about you that has nothing to do with Marco or my father or any of this. Dante was quiet so long I thought he wouldn't answer. I'm afraid of heights, he said finally. Ridiculous for someone who lives in Venice, I know. But I hate them. Won't go near the top of the Campanile, avoid rooftop restaurants, get nervous even on the Rialto Bridge when it's crowded. The confession was so unexpected I almost laughed. How do you hide it? I asked. Practice. Discipline. The same way I hide everything else I'm afraid of. He turned to look at me, our faces inches apart in the dim light. But tonight, when those men were in the safe house and I couldn't see you, couldn't protect you, that was worse than any height. That was a fear I couldn't hide from. My breath caught. I thought this was just business, I whispered. So did I, he said. But somewhere between your apartment and that chapel, between you pulling a trigger to save us and you challenging me to be better than my worst instincts, it stopped being just business. He kissed me then, and it was nothing like the chaste press of lips at our wedding. This was need and desperation, survival and surrender, two people who'd faced death together and come out the other side changed. I kissed him back just as fiercely, my hands fisting in his blood-stained shirt, pulling him closer. His hands moved to my waist, my back, tangling in my hair. Rosa, he breathed against my mouth. Tell me to stop if you don't. Don't stop, I said. The space between us disappeared. Dante's hands were everywhere, sliding up my ribs, cupping my face, threading through my hair with a gentleness that belied the violence we'd just survived. I grabbed his shirt, yanking it over his head, needing to feel his skin against mine, needing proof that we were both still alive. His torso was a map of scars, knife wounds, bullet grazes, the physical cost of the life he'd lived. I traced one particularly vicious scar across his ribs with my fingertips. Knife fight when I was 23, he said roughly. Remind me to tell you about it sometime when we're not. I kissed him, cutting off the words, done with talking. He responded instantly, his control fracturing. His hands found the zipper of my dress, sliding it down with agonizing slowness. The fabric pulled around my waist, and his eyes went dark with want. You're so beautiful, he said, his voice wrecked. And so far above someone like me it's almost cruel. Shut up, I said, pulling him back down to me. We moved together with the urgency of people who'd just stared death in the face, who needed to feel something other than fear and adrenaline. His mouth blazed a trail down my throat, across my collarbone, lower still until I gasped his name. My dress ended up on the floor. Then his pants. The barriers between us falling away until there was nothing left but skin and need and the desperate ache to be connected. Are you sure? He asked, even as his hands mapped every inch of exposed skin. Rosa, if you have any doubt. I'm sure, I said, pulling him closer. I'm sure about this, about you, about us. Just don't stop. He didn't. What followed was heat and friction, gasped breaths and whispered names. The world narrowed to just us, his hands gripping my hips, my nails digging into his shoulders, the delicious slide of bodies moving together with increasing desperation. Look at me, Dante commanded, his voice rough with control barely maintained. I want to see you. I met his eyes as he moved inside me, and the intimacy of it, the raw honesty in his gaze, was almost more than I could bear. You're mine, he said, not a question but a statement. Whatever else happens, whoever we were before this, you're mine now. And you're mine, I countered, raking my nails down his back hard enough to leave marks. This goes both ways, Cavalli. He groaned, his control finally shattering. We moved faster, harder, chasing something beyond just physical release, connection, proof of survival, the desperate need to feel something other than the violence that had defined the past 48 hours. When I came apart, his name on my lips, he followed moments later, burying his face in my neck and holding me like I was the only solid thing in a shifting world. Afterward, we lay tangled together, heartbeats gradually slowing, reality seeping back in around the edges. I started. Yeah, he agreed. I turned to face him, studying his profile in the early morning light. This man who'd been a stranger 5 days ago, who is now my husband in every sense of the word. No regrets? He asked quietly. Not even one, I said. You. Only that I can't keep you here forever, safe and away from everything that's coming. What is coming? He propped himself up on one elbow, his expression serious now. Marco knows his ambush failed. He knows we have his men, his information, his entire conspiracy exposed. He's going to move fast, probably tonight. One final desperate attempt to salvage this before it all comes crashing down. What will he do? Something public. Something that forces my hand and makes me look like the aggressor. Marco's always been good at playing the victim. Dante's jaw clenched. We need to move first. Hit him where he lives, literally. Take him down before he can manufacture some scenario that paints him as the hero. A knock on the bedroom door interrupted us. Boss? Julia's voice. We've got a problem. Actually, we've got a massive problem. Dante threw on pants and opened the door. I wrapped myself in a sheet and followed. Julia's face was grim. The prisoners talked. Marco's not planning to hit us. He's planning to hit the federal prosecutor. Tonight, at her home. Make it look like a robbery gone wrong. Eliminate the one person who can make all his evidence stick legally. My blood ran cold. Elena Marchetti has a family. 2 kids, a husband. I know, Julia said. Which is why we need to move now. If Marco kills a federal prosecutor, all hell breaks loose. Federal response, martial law, every organization in Venice gets torn apart. It would be the end of everything. Or, I said slowly, an idea forming, it could be the perfect trap. Both of them looked at me. Marco doesn't know we know his plan, I continued, thinking out loud. What if we warn the prosecutor, get her family to safety, but make Marco think his plan is working? He sends his men to her house, they walk into a federal ambush, and Marco goes down for attempted murder of a federal official. That's life in prison, no possibility of deals or reduction. Dante smiled, sharp and predatory. You're learning to think like us, he said. It's brilliant and terrifying in equal measure. Will the prosecutor go for it? Julia asked. She'll have to, I said. If we warn her in time, if we give her proof of the threat, she'll want to turn it into the case that defines her career. And we deliver her exactly that. The meeting with federal prosecutor Elena Marchetti took place in a secure location, a government building with enough guards to hold off a small army. She listened to everything we had. Pietro's confession, the prisoner's intelligence, the documented evidence of Marco's conspiracy. Her face remained impassive throughout, but I saw her hands tighten on her desk. He was going to kill my family, she said finally, her voice deadly calm. Make it look like a random crime. Yes, Dante confirmed. Tonight, around midnight. For men, entering through your back garden. Quick, clean, professional. And you want me to turn my home into a trap? We want to give you Marco Cavalli gift wrapped, I corrected. Attempted murder of a federal official, conspiracy, trafficking, everything you need to put him away forever. Elena was quiet for a long moment. My children, she said. I need guarantees they won't be anywhere near this. Already arranged, Julia said, sliding a folder across the desk. Safe house in Padua, federal protection, gone by 5 p.m. today. Your husband, too. As far as Marco knows, it's a normal Thursday night. And if something goes wrong? Elena asked. If Marco suspects the trap? Then we abort, get you out, and find another way, Dante said. But Elena, if we don't stop him tonight, he will try again. And next time, we might not have advance warning. She looked at me then, really looked at me, seeing not just Dante's wife, but someone who'd crossed over into their world. Your father was a good man, Rosa Ferretti, she said. I knew him slightly. He once provided evidence in a case about doc corruption, refused payment, said it was just the right thing to do. He wouldn't want this life for you. No, I agreed. But he'd want me to survive it. And right now, survival means stopping Marco before more innocent people die. Elena nodded slowly. All right, she said. Let's end this. The hours leading up to midnight crawled past with agonizing slowness. Elena's house was in a quiet residential area of Mestre. Normal, suburban, exactly the kind of place that was supposed to be safe. Federal agents disguised as neighbors positioned themselves around the perimeter. Snipers on rooftops. Surveillance equipment tracking every approach. Dante, Julia, and I waited in a van 2 streets over, watching feeds from a dozen cameras. Marco's men will come from the east, Julia predicted, pointing at the screen. Through the neighbor's yard, over the back fence. Classic approach. And the prosecutor? I asked. In her bedroom, visible through the window. Reading a book, looking completely natural. Dante's admiration was evident. She's good. No tells, no nervous movements. If I didn't know better, I'd think it was a normal evening. 10:45 p.m. Nothing. 11 p.m. Still nothing. 11:30 p.m. I was starting to think Marco had somehow learned of the trap when Julia suddenly tensed. Movement. 2 vehicles, parked 3 blocks out. For men, no, 5. Shit, he sent an extra man. Can your team handle 5? Dante asked. Yes, but it complicates things. The extra man might be a lookout, might be backup. We won't know until they move. 11:45 p.m. The men started approaching, spreading out through yards and side streets with professional efficiency. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Rosa Ferretti. Marco's voice, smooth and confident. Or should I say Rosa Cavalli now? Congratulations on your marriage. My blood turned to ice. Dante grabbed the phone, putting it on speaker. Marco, he said coldly. Bold of you to call. Bold? I prefer strategic. See, I know about your little trap at the prosecutor's house. Did you really think I wouldn't have someone on the inside? Someone who'd warn me that my plan had been compromised. Dante and Julia exchanged horrified looks. So here's what's going to happen, Marco continued. Those 5 men you're watching? They're not my men. They're federal agents I've been paying for months. And in about 3 minutes, they're going to discover evidence that you, dear cousin, have been planning to assassinate federal prosecutor Marchetti. Detailed plans, photographs, everything needed to issue a warrant for your arrest. You're lying, I said, but my voice shook. Am I? Check your safe house on Murano, the one you abandoned so quickly. My people have been there all day, planting exactly the kind of evidence that will make you look like domestic terrorists. The weapons, the plans, the manifestos. It's all there, Rosa. And when those federal agents discover it while investigating prosecutor Marchetti's house, the entire case against me collapses. I become the hero who exposed the real threat. The van fell silent. You can't win this, Marco, Dante said, but for the first time, I heard doubt in his voice. I already have. The only question is whether you run now and spend the rest of your lives fugitives, or stay and spend them in prison. Either way, I win. Marco laughed. Oh, and Rosa? Your father's boats? I'm taking them. All of them. Consider it payment for the trouble you've caused me. Goodbye, cousin. The line went dead. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then everything happened at once. Abort. Julia was shouting into her radio. Abort the operation. Get Elena out now. The safe house, Dante said, his face pale. If he planted evidence there, if it looks like we were planning this. We're fucked, I finished. Completely, utterly fucked. Elena Marchetti appeared on the camera feed, being rushed out by federal agents toward an armored vehicle. But even as I watched, more vehicles arrived, official ones, with lights flashing. Someone called it in, Julia said, her voice hollow. Reported suspicious activity at the prosecutor's residence. Now there's a full federal response, and when they search the property, they'll find whatever Marco's people planted, Dante finished. Evidence of a conspiracy to commit murder, all pointing back to us. I watched our carefully laid trap transform into our doom in real time. We have to run, I said. Right now. Before they connect us to this scene. Run where? Dante asked. Marco owns half the police force, has the federal prosecutors on his payroll. There's nowhere in Italy we can hide. Then we leave Italy, Julia said. I have contacts, safe routes. Switzerland, then Argentina. We can be out of the country in 6 hours if we move now. And abandon everything? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Let Marco win? Let him take my father's company, destroy our names, live happily ever after while we hide for the rest of our lives. What other choice do we have? Dante demanded. Rosa, we lost. Marco outplayed us. Staying means prison or death. I looked at the screen showing federal agents swarming Elena's house, then at Dante's defeated expression, then at Julia's grim acceptance. Something in me broke. Not into pieces, but into something harder. Sharper. My father's daughter meeting Dante's world on its own terms. No, I said. No, Dante repeated. No, we don't run. No, we don't let Marco win. And no, we don't play by rules that are rigged against us. I grabbed Dante's phone, pulling up Marco's contact. If he can plant evidence, so can we. If he can buy federal agents, we can expose them. If he wants to play dirty, then we go nuclear. What are you thinking? Julia asked. I'm thinking Marco made one mistake. He told us his plan. Which means he's confident, which means he's vulnerable. I was dialing before I could second-guess myself. And I'm thinking it's time to burn everything down and see who survives the ashes. Marco answered on the second ring. Rosa. Calling to beg? To offer me something in exchange for mercy. No, I said, my voice cold and clear. Calling to tell you that you forgot one thing in all your planning. What's that? My father didn't just leave me his boats. He left me his contacts. Every dock worker, every shipping inspector, every honest person he helped over 40 years. And I just sent them all the same message. Tell the truth about Marco Cavalli. Every illegal shipment, every bribe, every threat. Everything you've done for the last decade, now public record, sent to every journalist and law enforcement agency that isn't on your payroll. The silence on the other end was beautiful. You're bluffing, Marco said, but I heard the uncertainty. Am I? Check your phone, Marco. Check social media. Check the news in about 10 minutes. You planted evidence to make us look like terrorists? I just released evidence that makes you look like exactly what you are, a monster who hides behind family names while dealing in human suffering. You stupid bitch, Marco hissed. You have no idea what you've just done. The Bianchi family will. We'll cut you loose the second they realize you're a liability, I interrupted. That's how your world works, right? Everyone looking out for themselves? Well, congratulations, Marco. You just became everyone's problem. I hung up. Dante and Julia stared at me. Please tell me you actually did that, Dante said. Please tell me that wasn't a bluff. I showed him my phone, where I'd been typing messages for the last 3 minutes while Marco monologued. Hundreds of messages sent to every contact in my father's network, asking them to come forward with the truth. The responses were already coming in. I'll testify about the heroin shipments. I have photos of the bribes. Marco threatened my family. I'll tell everything. Your father helped me once. This is me returning the favor. Within minutes, it became an avalanche. My God, Julia breathed. You just started a revolution. I started the truth, I corrected. My father built his reputation on honesty. Turns out that legacy is worth more than Marco's lies. Dante pulled me into his arms, and I felt him shaking with laughter or relief or terror, I couldn't tell. You're insane, he said into my hair. Absolutely insane. And I've never been more attracted to anyone in my life. Save the attraction for after we survive this, I said, but I was smiling. Julia's phone exploded with alerts. Marco's moving, she said, reading rapidly. Pulling assets, calling in favors, trying to contain the damage. But Rosa, it's working. Social media is blowing up. Journalists are picking up the story. Within an hour, every news agency in Europe will be covering this. And the evidence he planted? Dante asked. Meaningless now, Julia said. If we're exposed as attempted terrorists, but Marco simultaneously exposed as a major drug trafficker and human trafficker, who do you think the prosecutors will prioritize? Plus, all these witnesses coming forward, it creates reasonable doubt about anything Marco says. We still need to deal with the Murano safe house, I said. Whatever he planted there. Already handled, Julia interrupted. I sent a team as soon as you started talking. They're documenting everything, photographing it, preparing proof that it was planted. Between that and your whistleblower army, we can demonstrate that Marco's been manufacturing evidence. I let myself breathe for the first time since Marco's call. Did we just win? I asked. We survived, Dante corrected. Again. Thanks to your father's legacy and your willingness to burn everything down to protect it. It's not over, Julia warned. Marco still has resources, still has allies. And the Bianchi family won't be happy about all this attention. Then we deal with that next, I said. One crisis at a time. The news coverage was savage. By 2 a.m., every major outlet had picked up the story. Venice crime boss exposed, decades of corruption revealed, whistleblowers bring down Cavalli empire. Marco's face was everywhere, grainy photos from security cameras showing him at meetings he'd thought were secret. The federal prosecutor's office issued a statement at 3 a.m. All charges related to the Marchetti House incident were being redirected toward Marco Cavalli, and a full investigation into corruption within their own ranks had begun. By dawn, Marco was in custody. We watched his arrest live on television, federal agents dragging him from his Porto Marghera factory in handcuffs while cameras rolled. He looked smaller on screen, diminished. The powerful crime boss reduced to just another criminal caught by his own arrogance. It's really over, I said, not quite believing it. The immediate threat is over, Dante corrected. But Marco's arrest creates a power vacuum. Other families will move to fill it. And the Bianchi family still has a bounty on our heads for betraying their deal with Marco. As if summoned by mention of them, Dante's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. Mr. Cavalli, an aged voice said. My name is Antonio Bianchi. I believe we need to have a conversation. The head of the Bianchi family. Calling directly. This was either an opening for negotiation or a prelude to execution. I'm listening, Dante said carefully, putting it on speaker. Your wife's publicity stunt was impressive. Messy, loud, completely counter to how these things are traditionally handled. But impressive nonetheless. You've made Marco Cavalli untouchable, not just by us, but by anyone. He's useless now. That was the goal, I said. Rosa Ferretti, Antonio said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Your father once did me a favor. Refused to transport something he knew was illegal, but did it quietly, without making a scene or calling authorities. He understood discretion. You, apparently, prefer the nuclear option. Only when people try to kill me, I said. Antonio laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Fair enough. Here's my proposition. The bounty is lifted. You and Dante walk away clean. In exchange, you both disappear. Completely. No more working with federal prosecutors, no more exposing operations, no more crusades against corruption. You take your immunity and you leave Italy forever. And if we refuse? Dante asked. Then I send my best people to hunt you and eventually they succeed. You're good, Dante. Your wife is clever. But we're better and we have infinite patience. I looked at Dante. This was the offer, our lives for our silence. Freedom for exile. We need to discuss it, Dante said. You have 24 hours, Antonio said. After that, the offer expires and the hunters come. Choose wisely. The line went dead. He's serious, Julia said. The Bianchi family doesn't make empty threats. So we run, I said. Take the deal, leave Italy, start over somewhere else. Is that what you want? Dante asked, searching my face. I thought about my father's boats, still sailing under the Ferretti name. About the dock workers who'd come forward at my request, who'd trusted me with their truth. About Venice itself, the city that had shaped my entire life. No, I admitted. But I want to survive more than I want to stay. And maybe, I took a breath. Maybe there's a middle ground. Maybe we can negotiate better terms. With the Bianchi family? Julia looked skeptical. They don't negotiate. They negotiated with Marco, I pointed out. So clearly they're pragmatic when it serves them. What are you thinking? Dante asked. I pulled up my phone, started composing a message. I'm thinking we offer them something they want more than revenge, I said. Information. Cooperation. A chance to clean up their operations before the federal crackdown that's definitely coming after Marco's arrest. You want to save them? Dante asked incredulously. I want to end this, I corrected. Permanently. More death, more violence, more running. That's not a life. But if we can broker a real peace, something that gives everyone a way out. They'll never go for it, Julia said. Then we're no worse off than we are now, I said. But if they do, if we can actually pull this off, we get our lives back. I sent the message to Antonio Bianchi. There's a better deal available. One that saves your family and ours. Meet us tomorrow, neutral ground. Come alone, we'll come alone. Let's talk like civilized people before we resort to hunting each other like animals. The response came 30 seconds later. Intriguing. Rialto Bridge, noon tomorrow. Come armed if you wish, I will. He's actually meeting with us, Dante said, disbelief in his voice. Because he's smart enough to be curious, I said. And because deep down, I think even the Bianchi family is tired of this life. The meeting took place exactly at noon, when the Rialto Bridge was packed with tourists. The safest public place in Venice. Antonio Bianchi stood at the bridge's peak, an elderly man in an expensive suit, flanked by 2 bodyguards who watched everything with predator's eyes. Dante and I approached from the opposite side, Julia shadowing us from a distance. Mrs. Cavalli, Antonio greeted, offering his hand. You have your father's courage, if not his caution. My father's caution got him a peaceful life, I said, shaking his hand. But it also made him vulnerable to people like Marco. I prefer a different approach. Clearly. Antonio gestured to the bridge railing. You wanted to discuss terms. I'm listening. Marco's arrest is just the beginning, I said. Federal prosecutors are going to use him to build cases against everyone he touched. They'll investigate every deal, every contact, every transaction. Within 6 months, half the organized crime in northern Italy will be under indictment. We're aware, Antonio said dryly. What if I could offer you a way out? I pulled out a folder. Complete cooperation with federal authorities. Everything you know about other families, other operations, everyone except your immediate organization. You give them dozens of cases, become the prosecution's star witness, and in exchange you get immunity, witness protection, the chance to take your money and disappear into legitimate life. Antonio stared at me like I'd suggested he fly to the moon. You want us to become informants, he said slowly. I want you to survive, I corrected. The prosecutor I've been working with, Elena Marchetti, she's ambitious but fair. She wants to clean up Venice, but she also understands that sometimes you need cooperation more than punishment. If you give her what she needs to take down your competition, she'll give you what you need to escape with your life and your family's future intact. My father died in prison, one of Antonio's bodyguards said coldly. My uncle, too. You're asking us to betray everything they built. I'm asking you to save what matters, I said. Your children, your grandchildren. Your ability to grow old without looking over your shoulder. Antonio, how many funerals have you attended? How many friends and family members lost to violence or prison? When does it end? Antonio was quiet for a long moment, looking out over the Grand Canal. Your father, he said finally, once told me something I never forgot. We were both young men then. I was just starting to build my organization. He was just starting his shipping company. We'd both lost our fathers. And he said to me, Antonio, every choice you make now echoes forward. Choose violence, and your children inherit war. Choose something better, and maybe they inherit peace. I felt tears prick my eyes. That sounded exactly like something my father would say. I chose violence, Antonio continued. I chose power and money and respect earned through fear. And my children? They've inherited war. My son is in prison. My daughter hasn't spoken to me in a decade. My grandchildren don't even know what I do for a living because we've hidden it from them. He turned to face me fully. Your father was right, Antonio said. And I was too proud and too stupid to listen. So yes, Mrs. Cavalli. I'll take your deal. Not because I'm afraid of prison or death. I've made my peace with both. But because maybe, just maybe, I can give my family the chance your father wanted for you. The chance to choose something better. Relief crashed through me so powerfully my knees went weak. Dante's hand found mine, squeezing. There are conditions, Antonio continued. First, the bounty is lifted immediately. Second, my family's testimony and cooperation remains confidential. We're not performing in court. We're providing information through closed channels. Agreed, I said. Third, and this is non-negotiable, we're done after this. My family cooperates, gets immunity and protection, and then we disappear. No more deals, no more contact with your world or ours. Clean break. That works for us, Dante said. Antonio nodded slowly. Then we have an accord. I'll contact Prosecutor Marchetti this afternoon. She'll have her cases, you'll have your peace, and perhaps your father's faith in human redemption will be validated. He offered his hand again, and I shook it, feeling the weight of history and violence and hope mingling in that simple gesture. One more thing, Antonio said as we turned to leave. Marco Cavalli will not survive prison. Whether it's us, or the families he betrayed, or just the general population deciding they don't like traitors, he won't last 6 months. I wanted you to know that, so you're not surprised when it happens. It should have bothered me, the casual promise of murder. Instead, I felt only cold satisfaction. Understood, I said. The next 2 weeks were a blur of legal proceedings, testimony, and negotiations. True to his word, Antonio Bianchi delivered. Names, dates, operations. The federal prosecutors worked around the clock building cases, arresting dozens of people across 3 regions. Marco's trial was fast-tracked. With Pietro's testimony, the whistleblowers, and now the Bianchi family's cooperation, his conviction was inevitable. Life in prison, no possibility of parole. I watched from the gallery as they led him away, and caught his eye for just a moment. The hatred there was pure and absolute, but impotent now. He'd lost everything, and we'd survived. Dante and I testified in closed sessions, our identities protected, our immunity guaranteed in writing by multiple agencies. When it was finally over, when every signature was obtained and every guarantee secured, Julia cornered us in Elena Marchetti's office. So, she said, what now? Now, I looked at Dante, this man who'd become my husband through deception and survival, who'd somehow become real in the process. Now we figure out if this marriage was just strategy, or if it's something we want to keep. Dante's expression softened. I know what I want, he said. But I need to hear what you want, Rosa. Without the threats, without the violence, without all the reasons we had to stay together, do you still choose this? Choose me. I thought about my father, about the honest life he'd lived, about the legacy he'd left me, not just boats and businesses, but the belief that people could be better than their circumstances, that redemption was always possible. Yes, I said. I choose this. I choose you. Not because I have to, but because somewhere between that warehouse proposal and now, you became someone I can't imagine living without. He kissed me then, in Elena Marchetti's office, in front of Julia and half the federal prosecution team, and it felt like a beginning instead of an ending. So where do we go? Dante asked when we finally broke apart. Italy's not safe long-term, not with the enemies we've made. Greece, I said, the answer coming easily. Some small island where we can see the water, where I can teach you to fish like my father taught me. Somewhere quiet. Quiet sounds perfect, Dante agreed. Though I should warn you, I'm terrible at fishing. I laughed, the sound surprising both of us with its lightness. Then I'll teach you, I said. Patience, timing, reading the currents. Everything my father taught me about surviving in rough waters. We should have known it wouldn't be that easy. 3 days before our planned departure to Greece, Julia burst into our temporary apartment with news that drained the blood from my face. The Russo family is making a move, she said, breathing hard. They're claiming the territory Marco left behind, and they're not happy about the Bianchi family's cooperation deal. They're calling it betrayal, saying it sets a dangerous precedent. And? Dante asked, though I could see him already preparing for the worst. And they've put out their own bounty. 1 million euros for Antonio Bianchi's head. 2 million for whoever delivers you both dead. The room spun slightly. We have immunity, I said. Federal protection. Which means nothing to the Russo family, Julia interrupted. They're old school, Rosa. They don't care about legal consequences. They care about sending a message, cooperate with authorities, and you die. Where's Antonio now? Dante demanded. Safe house in Padua. But the Russos know somehow. They're planning to hit it tonight. 7 men, heavy weapons. It's going to be a massacre. Dante and I looked at each other, the same realization hitting us simultaneously. We have to warn them, I said. More than warn them, Dante corrected grimly. We have to help them survive this. Antonio kept his word to us. We owe him that much. This is insane, Julia said. You're talking about walking into a gang war for a man who had a bounty on your heads a month ago. Yes, I said simply. That's exactly what we're doing. The safe house in Padua was a fortified villa on the outskirts of the city. Antonio had his entire immediate family there, wife, daughter, 3 grandchildren. When we arrived, he looked unsurprised. I wondered if you'd come, he said. You didn't have to. This isn't your fight anymore. You honored your word to us, Dante said. This is us returning the favor. Antonio's eyes glistened slightly. Your father would be proud, Rosa. Dante, you've become a better man than I ever was. Save the sentiment for after we survive, I said. Julia, what's our tactical situation? She pulled up a map on her tablet. The villa is defensible but not ideal. The Russos will come from 3 sides, front entrance, eastern wall, through the vineyard and back. 7 men minimum, possibly more. We have Antonio's 2 bodyguards, you 2, me, and whatever we can improvise in the next hour. 5 against 7 plus, Dante said. Not great odds. We've survived worse, I pointed out. Antonio's daughter emerged from the villa, her 3 children behind her. When she saw me, her expression crumbled. Please, she said. My children, they're 8, 10, and 12. They don't understand any of this. Please, if you're here to. We're here to protect you, I interrupted gently. All of you. Julia, can we get the family out before the Russos arrive? Not safely. Any evacuation attempt would be spotted, and they'd hit us on the road where we have no cover. Then we stay, Antonio said. We defend this villa like our lives depend on it, because they do. The next hour was a blur of preparation. Boarding windows, setting up firing positions, moving the children to an interior room that doubled as a panic room. Antonio's granddaughter, the 8-year-old, grabbed my hand as I passed. Are the bad men coming? She asked, her eyes huge. I knelt down to her level, remembering my own childhood, my father's gentle strength. Yes, I said honestly. But the good people are here too. And we're not going to let anything happen to you. Promise? Promise. It was a promise I had no right to make, but I made it anyway. They came at 9 p.m., just as the sun dipped below the horizon. 7 men, just as Julia predicted. They moved with professional coordination, spreading out to cover all approaches. Here we go, Dante muttered beside me, his weapon steady in his hands. The first shots came from the vineyard, testing our defenses, trying to draw return fire to identify our positions. We didn't take the bait. The Russo soldiers advanced cautiously, working their way through the grapevines. When they were 50 meters out, Antonio gave the signal. We opened fire simultaneously from 3 positions. 2 Russo soldiers went down immediately. The others scattered, returning fire, bullets shattering windows and splintering wood. They're flanking, Julia shouted. Eastern wall, 3 men. Dante and I moved to cover the new angle, firing carefully, conserving ammunition. Another soldier fell, but they were getting closer. A window exploded inward, glass spraying. One of Antonio's bodyguards took a bullet to the shoulder and went down screaming. We're getting overrun. Julia shouted over the chaos. Then the sirens came. Police sirens, federal sirens, half the law enforcement in Padua descending on the villa. The Russo soldiers hesitated, confused. They'd expected a quick massacre, not a police response. Stand down. A voice boomed over a megaphone. This is federal police. Weapons down now. The remaining Russo soldiers tried to run. They didn't make it far. Within minutes, it was over. 5 men dead in the vineyard, 2 in custody. We'd survived without losing anyone, though Antonio's bodyguard would need surgery. Elena Marchetti emerged from an armored federal vehicle, looking both annoyed and impressed. You called in federal protection, I said, understanding dawning. The moment Julia told us about the threat, Elena confirmed. Did you really think I'd let you all die after everything you've given us? Plus, catching the Russo family in attempted murder of federal witnesses? That's another career-making case. Antonio laughed, the sound bordering on hysteria. You people, he said to me and Dante. You've completely revolutionized how this world operates. It's terrifying and magnificent. His granddaughter emerged from the panic room, saw me, and ran over. You kept your promise, she said, hugging my legs. Looking down at her, at this child who'd almost become collateral damage in a world she didn't understand, I made another promise, this one to myself. No more violence. No more wars. Whatever it took, Dante and I were done with this life. That night, in a hotel room in Padua under federal protection, Dante and I finally let ourselves breathe. We're really done, I said, lying in bed beside him. After tonight, after all this, we're actually done. Are we? Dante asked, turning to face me. Because it feels like every time we try to leave, something pulls us back. Then we pull harder, I said. We take our immunity, our clean records, and we run so fast and so far that none of this can ever touch us again. Greece, Dante said. Greece, I agreed. No phones, no connections to the old world. Just us, learning to be normal people. He kissed me, slow and deep, tasting of relief and possibility. Normal doesn't feel possible anymore, he murmured against my lips. Then we'll invent a new kind of normal, I said. One where our biggest problem is whether the fish are biting, not whether someone's trying to kill us. We made love slowly that night, without the desperate urgency of survival. This was about choice, about claiming each other in a world where we finally had the freedom to do so. His hands traced patterns on my skin, reverent, possessive, grateful. I love you, he said, the words falling like prayers. I didn't plan to, didn't want to, but somewhere between that kitchen conversation and now, you became everything. I love you too, I said, and felt the truth of it settle into my bones. The real you, not the crime boss or the strategist or the survivor. Just Dante. We moved together with the rhythm of people who'd fought for this moment, who'd earned each other through blood and terror and impossible choices. When we finally collapsed together, tangled and satisfied, the world outside our hotel room felt distant. Manageable. Survivable. What do you think your father would say? Dante asked. About all this? About us. I thought about it carefully. I think he'd say I became stronger than he ever imagined, and scarier than he ever wanted. But I also think he'd say I found someone who loves me enough to help me survive that transformation. So on balance, he'd probably approve. Dante laughed softly. High praise from a ghost. The highest, I agreed. 6 months later. The fishing boat rocks gently on Mediterranean waters, the Greek sun warm on my shoulders. Dante's at the wheel, better at navigation now than I ever expected. We bought this boat with legitimate money, the sale of my father's company to a consortium of dock workers who'd come forward as whistleblowers, who promised to honor his legacy. Sometimes I dream about Marco, about that factory, about the blood and choices. Sometimes I wake gasping, convinced the bounty is back, that Antonio's family changed their minds. But Dante's always there, solid and real, reminding me we survived. We won. My phone buzzes, a text from Julia, who stayed in Italy to run security for Elena Marchetti's expanding anti-corruption unit. Marco found dead in prison. Looks like suicide, but probably wasn't. Thought you should know. I show Dante the message. He reads it, nods once, deletes it. Do you feel guilty? I ask. That we're here, safe, while he's... No, Dante says simply. Marco chose his path. He could have been someone different, someone better. He chose violence and betrayal instead. This is where that path leads. I lean against him, feeling his arm come around me. In the distance, dolphins break the surface, playing, free, unburdened by human complications. My father would like this, I say. The water, the simplicity, the honest work. I hope he'd like me too, Dante says quietly. The version of me that exists now. The version you helped me become. He would, I assure him. Because you're trying to be better. That's all he ever asked of anyone. The sun sets in brilliant colors, and somewhere far away, in prisons and witness protection programs, the people from our old life continue their stories. But here, in this moment, we're just two people who chose each other in impossible circumstances and somehow made it work. My father used to say the weight of water teaches you to swim. We swam. We survived. We killed when we had to, loved when we could, and ultimately chose life over vengeance. And against all odds, we're living.